Thank you. I'll be right back. That works.
So do a little bit of talking, so I can tell.
There's a gentleman that came back to your office, he's actually looking for keys, and he's hoping you might be able to help him out since Keith isn't here.
I'm sorry.
I put a gentleman back to your office, he was looking for Keith, and since Keith's not here, he's hoping you might be able to help him out.
I may not be able to do this. Is it not working out? No. There's no, I don't think we're gonna know. If I don't do.
Okay, I heard it loud and clear.
No, why? What does she have to say?
She's objecting to my last.
Well, it's not supposed to be loud, blah, blah, blah.
Want to start?
We still have 2 minutes?
Oh, I have 31. I had 9:31.
For me, as a
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning.
Morning, Steve.
I see we're all wearing masks.
Right now.
Yeah, I wrote a stinging message about that.
Are we ready?
Yep.
Okay. I've turned on the recorder. The time is now 9:30 a.m. I'm going to call the meeting of the Venetian Community Development District to order. Today's Monday, September 27th, 2021. First item on the agenda is the call to order / roll call. Those supervisors that are present are Rich Bracco, Steve Kleinglass, Richard McCafferty, and Ernest Booker.
Right.
On behalf of District Management is myself, Belinda Blandon. District Council Andy Cohen is present. District Engineer Rick Shopaker is present. General Manager of the River Club Denise Payton is present. We also have Wendell, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your last name, Gardner, from Prague present as well. And for the record, there are audience members present. Before moving forward with our agenda, we ask that everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the public comment portion of the agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, as a reminder, we will limit public comments to 3 minutes per person. Our first speaker is Tyler Cassell.
Do I need the microphone or am I okay? That's yes.
Well, sure, if you want to.
Well, I can talk about it. I'm loud enough anyway. Good morning, everybody. And I have my 3 minutes. I also have my wife if I need just a minute or so to tag on to what I'm going to say.
Use the mic, please.
Okay.
Use the mic.
Okay.
Thank you.
But I just had. Is it on? No. Is it on now?
It's 30 seconds.
Is it on now?
Yep, yes.
Okay, good. I just have to tell you, when I came to the pickleball hearing a couple of weeks ago, I anticipated a different kind of meeting. Since it's a public hearing required by the city, I thought we were going to have some questions and answers. It would be more like a forum where we could address you with some questions, and it wasn't. You disappointed us. I thought it'd be like the Comcast meeting that we had where there was a presentation, people talked, and there were questions and answers, and you disappointed us. You also had the meeting with 75% of the condo owners are not present, and that really doesn't look good. It looks like you don't want them to talk to you. It makes people feel like you don't matter. Vesta is looking at better ways of interacting with our community, and when you do things like that, it creates a major disconnect between you and us. I also expected some handouts at the meeting, but there wasn't any. It was just an engineering drawing, and Leckie talked about decibels. The whole discussion about noise decibels was not meaningful because it was all in general anecdotal statements. If I said to you, the decibels from Route 75 are 55 decibels, what would you ask yourself? Where was that taken from? Was it taken from the Shell station, the overpass, Willow Chase? How much traffic was on Route 75? Well, all the numbers that we talked about here are the same examples. There's no specific. You have to take the noise readings from specific points like 101 Bella Vista, 110, 105, over on Portofino. You have to measure noise from there. So, in order to do that, you need to have a study done to where you can get some hard numbers, hard decibel numbers. You have to do it. All the tennis courts are in play. Otherwise, your information is not going to be valuable. And you have to take readings over a few minutes when you can develop a graph that shows you points and so on like this. I'm going to hand you one of those today. Also, then you have the ambient noise. In addition to that, you need to go to someplace to get a professional opinion to overlay on that the pickleball projected noise. I recommended to you before a guy in Pennsylvania, his name is William Thornton. He's done 1,500 studies. He did one in Punta Gorda. He can give you such a report. He can take the ambient noise, lay on top of that, the pickleball noise, give you a full graph of what noise can be expected. Then you've got a full assessment. I'm going to give you today, each one of you, a copy of a sound assessment play with an example of a graph in there that shows you those numbers. The condo owners across the street who sleep in their front bedrooms or have their windows open need to know factual answers, guys. They don't need anecdotal statements. A couple of the condo owners right now are at their tolerance level with noise. Some are threatening to be forced out of the community if there's any more noise whatsoever. So if you had any one of those condo members on your board, they would be sitting there demanding that you do such a noise study. So you represent all of us. You should be prepared to tell them what they need to know. Please give this your best efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. I'd just like to comment on a few of the things you said. You realize, of course, we did this on a Zoom meeting, so no one was excluded. I'm sorry, I'm talking.
Okay, go ahead.
We did this on a Zoom meeting
Right.
to make it as inclusive as we possibly could.
Right.
It was notifying the community of where we are, and we will be going to the city council, which is a planning board, firstly, which would be a time for people to voice their concerns, as they had done last night.
Right. Well,
Thank
I'm going to respond to that. Giving a Zoom meeting is not really appropriate because people are up north. They're doing their own lives. They only come here 3 or 4 months of the year. They're not listening to the meeting.
You know, all we can do is make
75% are
it.
not
All we
here.
can do is make it available, and I think we did a good job of that.
Well,
Thank you, though.
available at the right time.
Thank you.
We need to move forward.
By the way, Tyler, I live in a condo.
Way down the street.
I can't hear you here anyway.
Well, you live way down the
We
street.
need to move
Okay,
forward, Mr.
thank you very
President.
much.
Are you going to speak as well? You do have 3 minutes.
No, he used
He
some
used
of her.
exactly 3 minutes.
Oh.
I didn't take account for the time with the microphone issues.
Good morning. My name's Helena Carnes, and I want to take just my few minutes to talk about communication, two-way communication. Over the 2 years that I've lived here, I've seen what can happen when we don't have a two-way street. Most recently, of course, the Blue Stream and Comcast situation.
Hold it closer.
Closer, is that better? So, and I know it's a responsibility on both sides. Any of the boards need to invite us, and we need to respond. Now, I don't think you want us at every meeting that has very minute, the minutia that might be going on. But, and nor do most people probably want to attend something like that. But big issues come up. And whether that looks like a quarterly town hall meeting, or semi-annual, I don't know. But we saw what the turnout could be when people are engaged and the topic is important. And I think we just need to do more of it. And I will continue on my little bully pulpit here every time, every meeting, to bring this up again until somebody comes up with some answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena. We publicize every meeting, whether people find it to be minutia that we're talking about and choose to stay home. I don't know what more we can do. We publish it. We publish the agenda ahead of time. We put all the documents there to be reviewed as we have today. We're going to have a presentation about finance. All the documents were presented to the community last Tuesday, I believe. We then follow it up with the minutes that are all sent to the community. Every meeting that we have from every committee is public. All people have to do is take the incentive, as these folks have, and come out and listen. And if they find that they've fallen asleep halfway through it, they can leave. But there's no closed door meetings. We do it on YouTube, so if you can't get to see it today, you can see it on Tuesday or Wednesday, or you can go back to the meeting from 2 weeks ago. We are being, in my opinion, as transparent as we possibly can. And what more can we do? Go individually and knock on doors? I'm not about to do that. We make it available. We make it available. All you have to do is come and take it in.
Well, that is all well and good, but what happens when it gets escalated to the point of the Blue Stream Comcast? So
Please don't mix us in with POA. Please do
But
not.
I'm talking about our whole community. That's why I said I'll be speaking at various
All right.
functions, because it's our whole community. And I'm not saying it's just you guys.
All right.
I'm not.
I thank you for your
I'm saying
comment.
it's a two-way street. And if people don't come, then maybe we need to look at why that is happening, and maybe reach out to people and tell them, you didn't come, and look what happened.
Okay.
I don't know.
Thank you. We're gonna move forward. Thank you very much.
Denise, can you have someone shut off the music in the background? Okay. Our next speaker is Effie Farinosi.
Oh, yeah.
You want to try?
I don't know, I need to work for you. You're more than welcome. Thank you. Oh my God, you guys, I'm so nervous
You gotta-
today.
Please use the microphone.
I
So we can all hear you.
I can barely be up here because I'm so nervous, so please forgive me and,
Fine.
have a little
You're
compassion.
fine.
When I came to this meeting last time, I was called a bitch by people as I walked, who were sitting in that corner over there as I walked up to the podium. So that's, there's a lot of things about me that are really unattractive that people could not like about me, but I'm really not a bitch. I just want everybody to know that. This is my home. This is my life. This is my ability to process things, to have peace, to read, and it is my sincere hope that my pickleball community, because I am also a pickleball fanatic, as a whole comes to recognize that this noise is unacceptable to homeowners. Please, we have courts going in down the street on Laurel Road. It's only common decency for everyone to have the right to a peaceful sanctuary that we call home.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jill Pizarro. Jill?
Morning.
Morning.
Actually, before, I just have a few questions for the gentleman from Prague, but I wanted to just build on something Elena said for maybe 30 seconds, because I'm as you all know me real well at this point, I'm a glass half full kind of gal. And I actually think we have an opportunity, once the board does its work on mission statement and we start talking about longer term, I would encourage you, Ernest and I have talked about this, I would encourage you to think about ways, once we have a long-term plan, how we could include the community in that discussion, because I've actually seen that bring communities together. There are ways that you can do that. So think about that as you go through your longer term work, how that might actually answer some of what Elena was talking about. Because you're able to celebrate your differences at the same time you find these little points where you agree. So let me just move on. First of all, I want to say I thought that your presentation was really helpful and I enjoyed reading it. I was also happy to see that a bank loan is being considered. I'd done some calculations myself last year, so I see that my calculator wasn't broken. Just a couple quick questions for you potentially to consider, and the following three are about the bank loan. And these are really questions I think residents might ask. I assume, for example, the collection of the monies due for a bank loan would be through the same means, through a non ad valorem assessment on the taxes. Many of us, I happen to have paid my bonds off, but many of us were deducting from our taxes. So I think that is a question, even though we can't give tax advice. Andy's like, no, we can't give tax advice. Nevertheless, the question is going to come up, even if the answer is only we can't give tax advice. And I wanted to actually ask, on page 15 of your presentation, when I was looking at it, it looked to me like it only referred to one of the two bond issues in terms of the reduced term options, but maybe that's because it's just for reducing the term of the longer term bond. So I wanted to just be clear that we are looking at a bank loan for both of the bond issues. Okay, perfect, okay. And then I think that was it, because the last question I had was really more of a question, I think, specifically that I'd probably ask at a Finance and Reserve meeting. So thanks for considering those. I think we might want to have an FAQ for residents as we get closer to this, but I really appreciate you. I see Jerry's here from the committee. I appreciate all the work that I know the committee's been doing on this, and it looks like a pretty attractive opportunity. I think I ran over, but thanks.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next time you only get 2 minutes.
You always give me 2 minutes.
There being no further speakers, at this time, we're going to close out public comment and move forward with our agenda. The next item on the agenda is the district engineer staff report, Rick.
Okay, just a couple items here. The sidewalk work, I looked at the sidewalks after the last meeting, painted them up. The vendor will be out here later this week to grind them. There were 2 locations, and then also there was a third. It's a curb gouge, pretty bad, so we're just going to kind of patch that. It's a minor thing. There's a leak. Belinda let me know about a leak out there on Venito and Padova, so I'm going to meet with the LMP guys right after. What words appears from the photos they're sending me? There's a gray conduit above the main, and their concern is, what is that? I'm thinking it's a street light conduit. So I mean, there should be electrical wire within it, but it's not the high voltage the kind, but still I'm gonna go meet with them afterwards. The tennis grates, it's almost like begging contractors to give me some numbers. So hopefully I will get one for you, Denise, very soon, but I'm trying hard on that one. Last week after the meeting, Keith had asked me to look at the property line behind the address is 133/134 Martelago. The resident was concerned about bank erosion. Went out there to look at that, and this is abutting the aqua range, which is not the CBD. So I looked at the plans, and there is no CBD land out there at all. It's the resident abuts the golf course. The resident, however, said that, well, these decorative grasses that are out there, it looks like somebody recently sprayed them because it was brown, a lot of the brown. Come to find out, LNP is doing some maintenance, routine maintenance on the decorative grasses. So the question that I have is that, and I'm looking at Andy, is, we don't own the property. Are we allowed to maintain that? I didn't find any agreements anywhere. So the resident was not there when I stopped by to take the measurements, but he called, he wants me to meet him after the meeting just to talk about that. But really, when I looked at this and I said, there's really no CDD involvement here at all. He says, but LNP is doing the work on the decorative grasses. So I wanted to throw that out there and see before I go talk to the fellow. I mean, do we stop LNP? Also, they had reached out to Lennar and met with them last week, and they sent me the email to ask if we are maintaining that bank. And I responded back because they had put riprap out there twice now since these residents lived there. So the golf course is maintaining the bank. The erosion is on the golf course side. I didn't see any erosion on the residence side, but it's down the bank.
I mean, if it's not our property, we shouldn't be maintaining it, absent some sort of agreement or something. And if nobody's aware of any type of agreement, then I think we need to notify the golf course that this is an area that they should be maintaining.
And notify LNP it's an area they shouldn't be maintaining.
Well, Bill is right here.
I know, I'm just trying to get on the record.
Right.
But this is the maintenance map that we have been utilizing for quite some time, and the area is right there. You could share that with everyone else. That's
So on here, it's 9 and 10 that we're talking about?
It's, yes, and it's this one here, the ornamental
I'm good
area.
I'm good, thank you.
Well, if it's not our property, we should have no involvement in any way in maintaining it. It's Lennar's issue, not ours.
Has the residents reached out to either of you two?
Yeah, we just met them on Friday. So we went over these things.
Down right here.
We have been
9 and
spraying
10.
weeds and keeping that at bay. So, yes, we have communicated to the guys to stop.
Okay.
But,
Let's see.
One thought that I had was that we could maybe just, my recommendation to them would be just to sod to their property line. And that would have to add probably 6 feet or so of the ground belongs to them. The rest of it is the bank that's owned by the course.
When you say put in sod, you're talking about the homeowner putting in the sod.
Correct.
Sure.
His property.
It's not us.
Approval from the POA. Right?
Who's going to maintain it is what we're talking about.
Well,
It's not us.
It's not our property. We don't.
Okay. All right, so Bill understands that we're not going to maintain it any longer if we've been doing it accidentally or whatever.
Correct.
No more. Okay.
Yeah, I believe at one time, 99% of the decorative grasses throughout the community were on CDD banks.
Mhm.
This happened to be the one place that was not.
This is Happer's.
So who's gonna tell the homeowner?
They want me to meet with them, so I'll share
Yeah,
the news.
and, to reach out to Lennar, as soon as possible for some resolution.
Okay, and that's really all that I had, unless anybody's got anything else for me.
Any questions for Rick?
Any idea about, the planning board and, shed and pickleball?
Working with them now, trying to put all the documents that they need together. Jeff Schrum is no longer with them, so they're trying to get somebody to replace him. Roger is the acting in his place for now, so just trying to deal with them and get them what they need.
Okay, thank you.
I have one question. Are you involved at all with the barrier at the end of Portofino near the park that we've had trespassers coming in? The residents have been complaining about?
The only involvement that I had, Keith had asked me to look at that. I did reach out to a surveyor to see if they could survey that. And it's pretty heavily vegetated, so the surveyor pretty much come back and said, I don't have the equipment to clear and do all of that, so he backed off. But Keith told me that the city was going to have their own people to survey that. And then I think he said the city was going to be putting up some kind of the barrier.
I believe it was the county, not the city.
Okay.
Well,
County.
some plantings over there, but the fence is still gonna be, if we choose to do it, the fence is still gonna be us. But the city is gonna, according to what we were told, the city is gonna be doing the survey, so we don't have to get involved in that at all. And the city is going to possibly be putting some plantings in there as well.
Poison ivy. I think it's a county.
Any other
Or
questions for
whatever,
Rick?
city or county.
Whoever. Somebody other than us.
Somebody other than us is gonna be doing it.
You know, there is currently signage in that area. I don't, probably doesn't do any good, but where all that wooded area is, there is signage.
Yes.
And that was part of Keith's presentation as well. I think they said some additional signage was gonna go up there, if I remember correctly.
The last time I was out there, that vegetation comes well down the bank, so I don't think they could walk along the bank and get around the other side. I mean, it's pretty heavy all the way down to the
I
edge.
think the problem is where the parking area is, in particular, that as you go further down, it gets pretty wet and swampy.
Okay,
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Rick.
thank you.
Moving forward with our agenda, supervisors, we now have the presentation by Prague. We do have Wendell present. Good morning, Wendell. Thank you for coming.
Good morning.
Thank you for letting me be here. Good morning, everybody.
The presentation is behind tab number 1, supervisors.
And I'm going to speak from the presentation. We've got page numbers actually on the presentation. I'll refer to those as we go. It's a big presentation. I'm not going to walk through the whole thing. My colleague Natalie Sador gave this presentation to the Reserve Committee.
Yes, you did.
And we called it an update, and it really is an update. There's a couple of things that we are looking for some guidance, and we've got recommendations as to the path we recommend, and we're really just making sure the board doesn't have an issue with that. There is one action item we'll need at the back end, and that is for the selection of bond counsel, so we can bring them on board. On page 4 of the PDF, we just got a little summary of kind of what we are looking for from the board today. We've done a fair amount of analysis on a number of options, both structure, timing, bank loan versus bond issue, because we wanted to be able to have comfort in our recommendations that what we're recommending to you makes financial sense and as we think is in the best interest of the community. So we'll lay out our analysis of the bank versus the bond issue. We'll need to know which direction we're going because we're going to be sending out an RFP. You need to make sure you're comfortable with that. At our initial discussion with the Reserve Committee, there was some question of, could we, instead of looking at just reducing level savings every year, is there the potential for reducing the term? So we've gone through that analysis. And it's not a decision we have to make today, but it is something we can include in the RFP to get information from the banks to allow a decision based on actual interest rate differences. And then we also looked at, given where interest rates are and the fact that you can't actually close the bond issue until February because of current tax law, does it make sense to do it now, or might you be better off waiting? And we'll walk through that analysis. Then the last one is the selection of bond counsel. We've got a market update in here. There's a lot of detail. I don't need to go over each one. I think the big picture is, from a historical point of view, interest rates are near historic lows, are very attractive. From a micro point, we are seeing pressure for upward rates. So part of that is a good thing. The board kind of started this process early and was proactive in advance of your initial call date. The first major analysis was the bank loan versus bond issue. And what we wanted to do there is to make sure that we had the path forward that we thought made the most sense. There's really no practical difference to the board if you go from a bank loan or a bond issue. It's really a different type of investor, but they're still providing funds to you. You're repaying them in the same manner through the assessments on property homeowners. Probably the biggest difference is, because the bank market is a limited number of banks versus the broad bond market, it can be a little bit volatile. If some banks decide to get in or out, it does change a little more versus the bonds. But we ran through our initial analysis, and just looking at where we saw recent bank loans and recent bond issues, the bank loan does provide slightly higher savings to the board. From a purely economical point, we think that makes the most sense to go forward with. There's some other intangible benefits that a bank loan gives you versus a bond issue, both in terms of initial timing and then in terms of ongoing requirements. The bank loan is just faster to get to closing. We don't have to go through a selection process for an underwriter. We don't have to go through a ratings process, and the time to actually sell the bonds takes a little bit of time. So you save some time with a bond issue. And from a legal perspective, the biggest issue between a bond issue and a bank loan is, when you issue bonds, you're issuing securities. And those are actively traded, and you have requirements in terms of secondary market disclosure that you have to maintain. When you do a bank loan, it's not a security transaction. You're just getting a loan from the bank. You do have some information you have to provide to them. It's usually your budgets and your financials provided directly to the bank. So the ongoing requirements are a lot easier also. And based on those issues, we think a bank loan makes sense. Our plan is to, in the next couple of days, issue an RFP to banks to actually get interest rate quotes back to the district. So the first indication is, if the board thinks that doesn't make sense, let us know, because we're going to start that process. And we can talk about all of it at the end. The other issue that some on the Reserve Committee had asked about is reducing the terms. We think that really is something we want to look at on the 2012A ones. That one currently has a maturity of just over 20 years. If we close it on the first allowable date in February, it will be slightly over the 20-year maturity, which would be in May. The greatest amount we could shorten that is really driven by how much the annual savings are, because the two things that we want to do with this financing is not increase the annual debt, not increase the principal amount of the bonds. So when we shorten it, what we really do is run up against that annual payment. So we could make it as short as your current, and as long as we get minimal savings in every year. And we ran through that on page 15. This is going to change depending on where the actual interest rates come in. If rates are higher, we're not going to be able to go quite as short, but we wanted to at least show you kind of under the current situation, we ran the numbers, what that would look like and what the impact would be. And really, if you kind of look at the first column is the current debt service. The second column would be kind of keeping the same terms as to where the savings would be when we ran these numbers. It was about $135,000 a year for the Series 2000 A1s. If we tried to shorten it up as much as possible, you'll see we have minimal savings each year, but it paid off in 2035. And under both the regular and the forward delivery. What we're proposing is to put in our RFP, ask for interest rates if we have your current maturity, and then something a little bit shorter, something in the 12 to 15 year range where we think it matches this, so that we can see. And then the board can decide which one makes the most sense from a policy perspective. And that's really a policy driven. Are you better off giving kind of everybody the same savings each year, or are you better off kind of allowing everybody's debt to be paid off earlier, or some combination of the two? Again, not a decision we have to make now. I think the only issue would be if the board thinks that there's no interest at all in shortening it, then we can leave that out. I don't see the harm in doing that. It might make it a little bit more attractive to the banks.
Right.
And the one piece that actually might really help is just a very small shortening of the debt. Taking perhaps a year off so that our final maturity is under 20 years, which may make it fit within some of the bank's policies. So that one I think may have real benefit. The other one is really a policy issue, and we can look at that when we get actual proposals. On page 17, we did the analysis that we talked about is it a good time to go now, or perhaps are we better off waiting so that you're not paying the forward premium? Because if we lock in rates 3 months prior to closing, there's a premium the bank is going to want for having that commitment and that interest rate risk that they're taking. And when we ran through the analysis of where we think and where we've seen kind of the forward premiums in the market, although you do lose some savings, we think it makes sense to go ahead and lock in rates given the kind of where interest rates are heading. This $200,000 difference roughly is about a 20 basis point change in interest rates. And that can happen pretty quickly. And therefore, we don't think it makes sense to wait. And then finally, what we do need some action on is the Bond Council RFP, as we talked about at the last meeting, I believe. The Bond Council is a specialized firm of attorneys that will give the opinion that the bonds or the bank loan are tax exempt. And they kind of are the guiding force in getting all of the documentation together for the financing and then giving those very important opinions. Specialized field of law, and it's one that the firm has to be active in that field for the banks or the bondholders to give credence to the fact that they're tax exempt. If I said they're tax exempt, they don't care. They want somebody who actually knows what they're saying. We went out with 6 firms that are active. We did a relatively brief RFP because we know all of these firms are capable and have done the business. We really kind of asked for some recent transactions, and then we asked for fees. And on page 21, you'll see we got 4 responses back. Again, we've worked with all of these firms in CDD transactions. We've highlighted in green kind of the 2 that had the lowest, and that's because Greenberg Traurig had the lowest if we did a bank loan. However, if we had to go through the Section 170 process because we were increasing the par amount or increasing the debt service, or we did a bond issue, Gray Robinson was somewhat was less expensive on that one. Greenberg Traurig is out of Orlando, Gray Robinson is out of Tampa. I am highly confident that the bank loan will work. The caveat is I don't control the banks. If something were to happen, we might then have to go through the bond issue route.
And I don't mean to interrupt
Sure.
you, but if we're successful with the bank loan route, you're not you don't have a crystal ball, but you're not anticipating having to do the 170 process.
No, we're not. And that's because your original bonds had a very large debt service reserve on them. The current bond market doesn't require as large a reserve, and the bank market requires even less.
Right.
So I can't imagine that we would need a 170 process.
Okay.
That's a great question, thank you.
How many banks are there that do this kind of thing?
You know, it varies. It varies on what the banks are looking for. There's probably 5 or 6 that are active, and it's really going to be how they like the community, you know, what their current portfolio is, what their activity is.
That's restricting it to Florida banks, right?
No, we actually, there's a couple of national, we've got a pretty extensive list that we send it out to. And there are some across the country that are looking for tax-exempt debt. And those in Florida seem to better understand the assessment process, but there are some that we've seen that have shown an interest.
So you don't anticipate any problem finding banks to take this if we go that way?
I don't think so. I don't know that I don't know that we'll get 6 responses, but I think we'll get enough to move forward.
There's a lot of CDDs going this route right now with refinancing. There's a lot of banks that are active in the market. Like we said, when I say a lot, I agree with him, maybe 5, 6, but they're out there and they're actively looking for these transactions.
Okay. So Wendell, I'm Rich Bracco. I was a part of the meeting with Natalie the other day. And one of the things that we were talking about was the term of a bank loan. And she felt that it would be more inviting for a bank if we didn't exceed 15 years. That's kind of what we're looking at here?
I mean, the shorter the loan, the more interest there are in banks, the more willing they are to do it.
Okay.
We've seen banks do 20 years. We're so close on this one that we're hopeful we can push them over that. If we do as we plan and ask for rates at the 20-year and the 15-year, there may be some banks that come in at 15 and don't come in at 20, but we want to at least get all that information together to have real interest rates and come back. The flip side is the size of the loan here, we're looking at about 14 million, is actually pretty good. It's big enough for banks to do the analysis and know that they've got a pretty good return. It's easier to do one $14 million than a lot of smaller ones. It's not so huge that the banks are going to have risk concentration concerns. So I think that's positive. Obviously, the status and development here is positive. Kind of the valuation of the homes is a positive. So no crystal ball. It's not like there's 100 out there and we're sure, but we think that the likelihood is pretty high. And if we came back and no banks were interested, or they were giving us a rate that was way off market, we would immediately go into the bond route.
Okay.
And we still would see, we think very strong savings there. And we think we'll see savings that are slightly better or as good with the bank, and it'll be a lot faster.
And you would anticipate one bank taking the entire loan rather than a portion? 2 banks take a little bit or something like that?
Probably. Sometimes when you have these 2 series, we allow them to bid separately. I'm not sure we want to do that. It's a whole lot easier to have one bank, one set of closing documents, and move faster that way, especially since we're looking at a forward and we're going to have the banks kind of lock everything in early, but then actually not fund for 3 months.
And that it's approximately $1 million or so that we're holding and we're required to hold in sort of like an escrow account, I guess. That money gets freed up. Does it reduce the amount that we're going to borrow in full? Do we take that full amount, or do we take a portion of that amount, or what do we do?
Bond counsel usually requires us to take the full amount.
The full amount.
It was bond proceeds that were set aside into a reserve. We typically have to take that and reduce the amount of the outstanding bonds.
Okay.
We'll have a new reserve, but it will be much smaller than and if you stop and think, when the original bonds were issued, this was a much higher risk as homes were being built. So there was a higher reserve. Now that it's built out, the risk is down and a lesser reserve is required.
You're anticipating pre-closing, like now and then just funding 3 months from now, or pre-closing later as well?
That's kind of pre-closing is typically right before we do documents. We anticipate at least doing a rate lock agreement now, and then we would probably actually pre-close all of the documentation much closer to the February date. But we would, enter into a document that locks in those rates.
Is there such a thing as a prepayment penalty? I mean, if we fell into a ton of money and decided to pay it off a year or two earlier?
That I would anticipate would be part of what the bank's term sheets will include. One bank might have a prepayment penalty and one might not, and varying degrees in the middle.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
Okay. So we won't know that until we get responses.
Correct.
What do you see as interest rates right now?
We ran the numbers here a couple months ago, and rates have gone up. The kind of the underlying indexes are up about 20%. I'm sorry, 20 basis points from where we ran these. So where we were looking before at about 3.6 million in total savings, it's probably around 3.4 million right now.
Okay.
So still very strong savings. We had something at about a 230, so maybe it's a 250.
Are there any local banks that are interested in this kind of thing? So in Venice in particular? And is that an option or?
No, it's clearly an option. I'm trying to think through which ones we've seen. We've seen some from Southwest Florida. I'm not sure in a specific, but if Belinda's got a list of banks that that you do business with or that are local, we definitely can include them.
Sure.
Financial institutions like
If there aren't any more questions, let me make sure I answered the other questions too. Tax collections between bank and bond issue will be the same. As to the tax treatment of the assessments, I'm not an accountant, I can't give tax advice. And we were really looking at shortening just the longer piece of it. We could shorten both, but the longer ones kind of stuck out and seemed to be the one to focus on. And a bank loan for both of them.
Ernst?
Yeah, I have a
question.
I have a question. Well, it's moving on to bond counsel. I note that two of the firms seems to be competing partners. Greg Robinson as well as Brian Miller, Olive.
Yeah, they're not competing partners. They both do this type of business. We included both of them just to make sure it didn't fall through the cracks, or if one was on vacation, the other one saw it.
Well, they either tag team it or one will be assigned to it because the other one's too busy or something like that.
And
that's what I've seen.
It's Misty and Monique kind of have different areas at Brian Miller and Olive. Misty does a lot of CDD work. I would expect she would be the primary, but we wanted to include both since they both do some of it. And at Gray Robinson, Brian is the group head, and Jennifer is part of his team. And since both of them are capable, both of them do the work, we want to make sure both of them saw the proposal.
Yeah, he's the senior shareholder too.
Correct.
All Red Book people.
Yes.
Yep.
Good job.
No, well, I used to do this, so Red Book and all. Okay.
The Red Book is actually a book that used to be read that lists all of the participants in the municipal bond industry. And in order to give an acceptable bond counsel opinion, you traditionally have to be listed in the Red Book.
So they know. Yeah, in New York, that's what
But it's all electronic now. I'm not sure that you can book it anymore.
So for today, Wendell, you would like the board to give you a direction and on two issues. One, on the RFP for a bank loan as opposed right now to a bond issue. And secondly, on bond counsel.
Yes, and the selection of bond counsel is really necessary because when the bank loans come back in, we want bond counsel to look at those, or at least look at the ones we think are best to make sure there's no concerns within those that would impact that. So we want to bring bond counsel on board. We went out with an RFP for these, whichever selection the board makes. We'll let all of them, we'll let that firm know. I would envision that they would have an engagement letter sent to Andy for his review, but they'll start their process right away.
Just for the other supervisors to know, at the meeting held on, well, maybe I'll ask Jerry to speak to the consensus that was discussed. We took no vote because we only had a workshop, but the feeling of the members of the committee. Okay.
Actually, the committee accepted all of Craig's recommendations, and that would be the bond, going bank loan, looking at the alternative short term, and then basically the forward point purchase. Now, the other decision on the bond council, basically, because of the, even though Warren said that the potential is probably, the great potential is a bank loan without any section 170. Ray Robinson, if anything happened, looked like they fit better. It would take up that slack. So I think the committee recommended Ray Robinson there to the board.
I mean, I was just chatting with Ernest. I know pretty much everybody on this list as well. You know, I do a lot of, obviously with my other CDDs, that there's this limited number of pool that do this work. Warren Bloom from Greenberg's been around forever. Actually, I'm surprised he was the lowest. He usually knows how to charge very well, but I like Warren very much. Most of the work I've done is either with Misty Taylor or Cynthia Wilhelm, and I recognize that they're on the high side, but I have certainly done work with Brian Fender and Gray Robinson as well, and Jennifer.
And for negotiation purposes, you come in with certain types of firms that have the reputation we all know and the pizzazz. Warren would be the guy.
He's like the godfather of CDD bonds.
And that helps in negotiating and savings to it.
I don't know whether he'll personally work on it or someone from his team, but obviously he'll have his hand in the pie.
So you're feeling good about Greenberg then?
It's up to you guys, like I said, but I have no reservations about anybody on this list.
Good to hear.
These are all qualified firms, all before.
That's very good to hear.
One firm, Holland and Knight, did reply that they were too busy right now, and didn't know that they could serve you.
Go back to the mic, please.
Sorry about that. Just to point out that one of the firms, Holland and Knight, also a very good firm, did respond saying that they've got a lot on their plate right now and didn't know that they could serve you. All of the others responded, and I'm sure.
I mean, Neighbors, Danny Tyler was with Neighbors in Giblin. Danny has passed away now, but they are the ones that helped back in 2012, and he was the original bond counsel. Cynthia took over his portfolio. She's eminently qualified, but I recognize, of course, that their fees are a little higher than the others.
So what we're seeking today, supervisors, is a motion from the board to move ahead with a bank loan. Ernest?
Yeah, that's what I'm prepared to make a motion.
Go right ahead.
I make a motion that we go the route of securing a bank loan for the refinancing of the outstanding bonds.
I'll second that motion. Any additional comments, questions? We'll call a vote.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I'm prepared to make another motion.
Go ahead, Ernest. You're on a roll.
All right. I make a motion that we select Warren Bloom as the refinance counsel for purposes of the previous motion.
That's Greenberg Torg you're talking about, right?
Yes. Yes.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Let me just ask if I could, Mr. Chair. Jerry, is there anything else that the committee would like from the board today, or did we accomplish the goals that you needed from the committee side?
Yes, basically, other than the two alternatives that go along with the bank loan, I think Warren's requested that basically you look at both alternatives on term and that you also on forward purchase. And I don't think your motion covered that.
Those will be, we'll put those into the RFP, and those can come back and, I think
So I think you have, just if we need it for the record, I think you have board direction to include those options in the RFP. Am I correct, board?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could we state those options, please, so that we're all clear on them? And
The
I think, I'd like to see it be amended as part of the motion. So it's all.
The options are basically to look at a shorter term loan, that was on the 1A series, I believe, the River Club series. And secondly, look at, again, as an alternative, the locking in the rate.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so you have two
Separate
things,
motion.
shortening the term and locking in the rate. Ernest, do you want
Yeah, I would accept those amendments to the motions.
to? I'll second that. Any other questions?
Call a vote.
All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
All right,
Aye.
great, great job.
Wendell,
And
thank
I've
you.
got one more on page 23, just to
Okay.
kind of show you what the future is. We've got kind of the bank loan process and the bond issue process. The next step for us would be to go ahead and reach out to Warren, get him up to speed. He'll coordinate with Andy, whatever on the engagement letter side he needs. And we'll get a bank loan RFP out to the banks. Our goal would be, at your next board meeting in October, to come back with the responses of the banks and a recommendation to you. And then shortly after that, we would go ahead and execute the rate lock. And then in January, we would finalize documents, finalize the new assessment report, and move forward to a closing in February. We're hoping to have it in time for the reserve committee. It's just, we want to make sure we give the banks enough time also, so.
Okay.
And board, just so you know, a little bit planning in your head, there'll be some resolutions, one that I would prepare, one that your bond counsel would prepare. Of course, bond counsel will prepare all the closing documents. Then we'll also need an assessment methodology that I assume that Scott Brizendine and his team from Rosetta would take care of.
In that report, we'll kind of take our big picture loan refinancing numbers and translate that and allocate that to the individual homeowners.
And make an actual revised assessment roll, which shows each property owner what their savings is.
Thank you very much.
Don't go anyplace.
Yeah.
First, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
very professional. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendell.
Yeah.
Before we go any further, this is really a significant development for our homeowners. And I'm assuming there's some real potential that there's going to be a decrease in some money for homeowners. Although how much, we're not even going to discuss. It seems to me that it's really time for some communication to our homeowners. I mean, this is an exciting piece of information. And I'm sure that the rumor mill is going to start taking off here.
Yeah.
How can we be proactive? Rick, with due deference to what all you said, my feeling is that for once we've got some really good news to share here. And so is there an opportunity to be proactive here?
Well,
But we haven't,
until we get real numbers back, which is going to be very short.
Yeah,
It will be the major issue in the CDD newsletter.
okay, but is it premature to at least say what we've done today as part of a process? And I'm asking here, Jerry, I'm asking. And I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot, but this is a good news story. I mean, we dwell in a lot of stuff here. This is really a good news story today.
I have been very good at results and making recommendations with.
got a little bloody nose, Jerry?
Don't back off. Never back off.
So basically, I think probably what I'll say is just the opposite of what I think, okay? No, actually, again, you're gonna have to talk in general terms.
Right.
You're saying, okay, look, Well,
we're
say-
exploring.
And saving 3 million probably doesn't mean a lot to the people over the.
It's a lot to
You
me.
can say, okay, if, basically, you gotta be careful too, because as a board, you haven't decided what you're gonna do with this.
Exactly.
Close the
That's,
deal
that's my
first.
concern, Steve.
And so if you start saying, so I would say a notification that we're looking at this, appears there's savings for the community and this type of thing. I wouldn't get the details.
No,
That
I'm not
notif-
asking
the
for
news-
that.
Yeah.
That notification was in the September, October newsletter.
Yeah.
Because I wrote it, so I know it's there. I'm very, very reluctant to say anything like, we're gonna get, 2.35%, we're gonna save 50 million bucks.
Not
Once-
advocating that.
Once
just
it's
the
done.
fact is shortening the one term zone.
Well, that's-
That means, for 15 years,
I
basically,
will-
nobody in here is
I
going to
want-
get savings. So
I'm not
you gotta be
advocating-
careful.
I'm with you 100%. I'm not advocating saying we're gonna save 2 million, 6 million, we're doing this, that, and that.
Right.
This is a good news story.
Yes.
And I don't understand why we're obstinate to not put out good news to our residents.
Because it's not
Don't we have to
finalized.
close the deal
It's not,
first?
it's not finalized.
You can
I
say
think
all
it's-
that. All right.
I think it's
let's move on.
premature.
Let's move on.
Well, Mr. Kleinglass, when the assessment methodology report is prepared, you'll have more information that can be disseminated to the community, which will help in understanding
Yes.
what is happening and what type of savings the homeowners will actually have.
I hear you all. I'm not suggesting we say homeowners are gonna save X amount of money. I'm more worried about the rumor mill taking off and we get behind the ball here. That's all I'm coming from. All right, let's move on.
Steve, if you also remember, one possibility here is you were very concerned, as other people were, about the balances in our reserve account, that we could refund get the reserves back up. But again, before we know if we say that we're gonna do that, then we have to do it. Let's wait till we know exactly what we're dealing with, and then we can, go from there.
You actually,
We can disagree here. I just want us to be thinking about, when we have some good news to tell our community in broad terms, why aren't we telling them? That's all I'm asking.
But Richard's already done that.
All right, let's move on. Let's move on.
Wendell, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is item number 4B, which is the discussion regarding the Venito landscape project. Rick is very excited to discuss this.
Do you want the microphone?
This time I got it underneath the thing. There we go. Funny. On Friday, Joe Spinella, the chairman of the landscape committee, and I met with the landscape architect. We had a very productive meeting with him. We met here in the River Club, and then we took my golf cart and went out and drove Venito from stem to stern. He is in agreement that we can, on the west side, no additional plantings, go with sod and mulch circles underneath the existing oak trees that are there. And then we will finish, he will do a plan for the last 3 planting beds as you exit the club on the right-hand side along the hole number 9. But he was very comfortable with going with sod and mulch on the west side. And he will redo the plan for the east side, excluding the bald head cypresses, cutting down the number of plantings. He reiterated what he said at the meeting, that less is more. So we're not going to overplant that east side. I hope to have that planned by our next meeting. I don't know if we'll have it for the landscape committee meeting on the first Monday in October. And I don't know if there'll be a meeting, if we'll have a quorum yet, because 2 of the members are still gone. Relative to the sod, I know Keith had reached out to other vendors for the sod quotes. To my knowledge, we've not received them. The other company he went to besides L&P is the company that provides the sod for Hazeltine and MRT. But as you know, Keith is gone. We don't have the bid. What I'd like to do today, so we don't kick this down the road like we have a tendency to do, if we'll accept the LMP bid, not to exceed the LMP bid of $13,908, If the other one come in the next week significantly lower, we'll use those, but, I doubt they'll be lower, but I don't have any way to know that. I don't have a crystal ball.
I'm fine with not to exceed if the rest of the supervisors feel the same way.
Can we do that legally?
Not to exceed?
No, I mean, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, sure.
If there's another bid that comes in.
Tell me more specifically what this bid will do for us.
This bid will basically, all the beds where the plants were removed,
On the west.
on the west side, the right side as you're exiting, there'll be circles around all the oak trees, we're trying to get them all about 15 feet. There are some areas that you can't do that because there's not enough room, give or take. But no additional plantings, at least at this time on the west side.
And it's from Laurel Road
To
here.
the roundabout.
Not including the
It does
roundabout.
not include the
But
roundabout.
to the roundabout.
Right.
I'll second that motion.
But this doesn't,
Before,
Wait, what do we, motion?
I did have a question for Bill. Bill, do you mind coming up, Bill, just so I can hear you? On the irrigation side, are we sure that there's no additional adjustments, expenditures for irrigation? Because this doesn't include anything irrigation related.
That is correct. Yes.
So there's no additional
We will
work
not
to
have-
be done.
we will not
Everything
have
has been
to-
accounted for on the irrigation side.
Correct, yeah.
That's on the west side.
Okay.
When we get to the east side, it's probably gonna be a different story.
Yes, and then, I did have a question regarding the delivery of sod. Andy and I attended a meeting recently where one of the vendors said that there was issues obtaining sod currently. Is
Too
there gonna be
wet.
a delay in the delivery of the sod?
Well, that's a good question.
Is it
I brought that
available?
up at last meeting. Availability is going to be our biggest roadblock right now.
Okay,
So if we had approval today, by the end of the day today, I could have an answer on when we could expect delivery.
I'm just reticent, I'd be happy to do that if the board is good, or we can wait until see what, if Keith comes up with any other bids, he'll be back, Wednesday? Tomorrow.
this doesn't include the mulch though, right?
No,
The mulch is part of the
the
other
mulch should
contract.
be part of the mulch
The other
contract.
contract.
And the architect is gonna take mulch out of his, estimate for costs.
From what you know, does this look like a fair price for some?
Yes. Considering, other prices of mulch, or of sod, well over $1 a square foot, or whatever.
you also have to take into consideration the warranty portion of this. So if you have another vendor do the work and install the work, there has to be some sort of a tight contract where it speaks of the maintenance of the sod and the warranty, because if you have someone else do it, but
Gotcha.
LMP is going to be maintaining
Then you
it,
get finger pointing
You
at
have a lot
guys
of
whose
finger pointing between
responsibility was
contractors.
it.
so it is something for the board to consider, since
That
this
has
is your
value.
landscaping maintenance provider.
Also, on the other, when we had looked at another contract last time, I think LMP had the lowest price at 61 cents, that's a square foot,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That is a great price.
Yeah, that, the other vendor
Let's go with
was
this.
higher.
Yeah,
So I'll make a motion, we accept this, the LMP bid for $13,908 for the sod on the west side of Venito.
Is there a
and the
second?
time frame to get it done,
ASSAP.
Okay.
Second.
I'll second your motion.
Well, I heard Ernest first.
Okay, that's fine.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Good job.
Go order some sod.
All right. Here's my
Quickly.
question, though.
Green side up.
You said
Use
from.
the mic, is there a mic there?
Okay, you said from Laurel Road all the way to the roundabout.
Correct.
I did not include this estimate included from the guard shack,
Right.
from the stop sign.
That's what.
Yes,
Okay.
that leaves 3 beds on the right-hand side, from the guard shack to Laurel,
Right.
along hole number 9, that the architect is gonna
Gotcha,
do a planting plan.
gotcha. All right.
We're all on the same page.
Perfect. I'll be in touch.
Okay.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Bill. Good job on this. Thank you.
Moving forward, supervisors, we do have item number 4D, which is the consideration of the addendum to
Here,
the
you wanna get
district
this?
services contract. This was sent separately to the board as well as district council.
This is a housekeeping item because of the increase that was included in the budget for the second meeting of the month.
Board members, from a legal standpoint, I don't have any objection to the text. The question about policy decision and the numbers, that's up to you guys, but I have reviewed it, don't have any problem with the form.
Were there any questions regarding the agreement?
I have no questions.
If there are no questions, we'd be looking for a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion that we approve it.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is item number 4E, which is the consideration of the second addendum to the contract for professional amenity services. This is behind tab number 3. This is also being presented because of your budget increases as well as the increases for staff.
Again, I don't have any problem as to the form, but there is a typo in the first paragraph with the date. It says as of the 2021 day of October 1st. Just need to be flipped. Other than that, I have no issue.
Any questions?
Well, I have a few. Okay. Didn't we have a reserve a couple of years ago prior to me coming on this board in which we budgeted a certain amount of money, well, projected a certain amount of money for the resurfacing of or reconditioning of the tennis courts? I believe it was $19,999. Now, since that time, I believe 2 of the courts, there was another contract.
That's not.
You're on the wrong one, Ernest.
We're talking about the amenity services contract.
Oh,
We're on
okay,
tab
I'm
3.
sorry.
You're way ahead of us. We're not there yet.
Okay,
Tab 3.
no problem, no problem.
Yes, back up. Whoa.
Any other questions regarding the amenity services agreement? If there are none, we'd be looking for a motion to approve.
With the one change in, with the typo at the beginning, I'll make a motion that we approve it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
What's the proper date?
Oh, it's just
1st.
October 1.
Okay.
It's just reversed.
Just reverse.
Okay.
All those in favor, please state aye.
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 Thank you. We're now moving to item number 4F. Ernest is in a rush to get to this.
All right, here you go, Ernest. Roll, man.
It's the consideration of the Richmond tennis court resurfacing quote. This is behind tab number 4.
Now you're up.
Denise, do you want to give the board an overview on this proposal?
Yes.
Denise, you want to use the mic or take the mask off or something?
Thank you. We received a quote from Richmond for courts 1 through 4, and the quote is for $19,200. We had already done courts 5 and 6 earlier, and this is resurfacing and doing the lines on the court. It will also be getting the algae off of it. And it will have a total of 20 tons of clay.
How come we only have one bid?
Welsh never got back to us. They don't do small things like this. They're so busy. They did not even respond to any of the emails that we sent. And Welsh is consistently higher than Richmond. And they're pretty much the only 2 in this area that usually respond to bids, but Welsh hasn't.
Glenn, do you recall how much we paid to have the other 2 courts done?
$13,500
The contract is
for 2 courts. The reason being court 5 was in really bad condition, and court 5 alone had 15 tons of clay put on it. And they also had to remove a lot of clay from there to put the new clay on.
And Denise, I assume this will come out of the reserve? There's a reserve amount of $21,024?
Yes, it will come out of the reserves, and part of that reserve money was used for court 5 and 6. So there is not this amount in there. But if you remember, which I vaguely remember when, I think it was 2 years ago, we had 3 line items in the reserves. One was the yearly resurfacing of the courts, then there was the 3-year, and then there is the 9-year, I believe it is. And we removed the 1 year because Charlie's been doing that for 16, 17 years. So it was 12,000 a year that he's been doing. So we have saved a couple $100,000 over the year, but that, hopefully then adding it to here isn't gonna be a real issue. I don't know if we take it out of, non-allocated or, surplus to put it, to do these.
Well, if we had 21,000, but we used 13 and change already, so that's 7 to 8,000.
Yeah, very low.
So we're short about $11,000 to $12,000 here.
There's 2 line items. There's resurfacing and reconditioning. Reconditioning.
A little louder, please.
Reconditioning was 21,000. Resurfacing was 43,961. Resurfacing is not due until 9 years from 2019. So I don't want to say those funds are available because they don't appear to be based on what
Correct.
was already paid. You can still use reserve funds towards it, but with the understanding that you are paying for something at this point that is not scheduled.
That's my problem.
And you've got clay prices just skyrocketing as everything in this country and in the world is doing. I don't know if one day these numbers will go down, but this is another item that the Reserve Committee will have to change prices on.
Well, in the non-reoccurring on the River Club, we're, at least as of August 31st, we'd only spent 40,000 of the 86,000 budgeted, right? If I'm looking at this number correctly?
What page you on? This is
Yes.
on the
Page 9 of
August
the,
31st?
what we received this week.
August 31st.
Yeah. Non-reoccurring expenses budgeted 86,290,
Yes, you've only
spent
spent 40,000.
40,000 and change.
So there's $39,061 there?
Yes. You can't pay it from non-recurring.
Well done.
We can take
I'd
it-
rather see us do that than go into the reserves.
We can take it out of that, Belinda?
We can. I would just advise that we proceed with the contract as soon as possible and have the vendor provide us with a deposit invoice so that we can go ahead, deposit invoice and second invoice, so it can be booked before the end of the fiscal year.
Right.
We're on September 27th, so we're in a time crunch. We would need to receive that information as soon as possible if approved by the board.
Richmond likes to raise their prices anyway.
Yes, that too.
Yeah, and I would like to see us use what is left in the reserve because this has been financially a very difficult year for the River Club. So I don't want our bottom line to go over and then we have to ask for more money in the
Well,
end.
That seems like a way to, your suggestion seems like a way to do it.
Well, what about this algae treatment and all? Why is that additional?
Well, because it has to be hand scraped. You get a flathead shovel out there and you scrape as far down as you need to go. It's usually around the poles, around the net. This algae starts growing. It's a constant that goes out there. So it is hand scraping to get it done. It's going to be hours and hours and hours of work. And the guys try and keep up with it, but it's just, sometimes it just goes further down deep into the clay and has to be done professionally where they get that out.
Are we taking any action, proactive action in preventing this from happening to the other courts?
You can't really prevent it, but you can keep up with getting rid of it. And that's something that we work on. But there are times with as much rain now, especially, where it just continues to grow and grow.
So our guys can't do it.
They do some to try and keep up, but it's not something that they can 100% keep under control.
Well, Belinda, I have a question. The reserve calls for this to be done when?
9 years from 2019.
And that is that's the major one where they literally scrape out the clay and then add more clay. And this is just adding clay on top of and doing the lines. And adding clay, Charlie can always add the clay, and he does yearly, but he does not do lines. That takes a real precise professional to be able to get those lines where there's no waves in it. Otherwise, as is happening now, when it rains, it fills over and you have to literally scrape the lines instead of just sweeping the lines. And with a roller, our lines eventually get lower. Most clubs, the lines go up and they're a trip hazard, but we have our own roller to keep them down. But eventually it does get a little bit of a dip in it and then they have to be redone.
So this is a maintenance issue, not an overhaul issue.
You have two line items. You have resurfacing.
Right,
And then you have the other line item, which is reconditioning.
okay. And is this going to have to be done every year?
No, every year the clay is added
Right.
and rolled and scarified and raked, and that's what Charlie does right now. Eventually he's gonna get too old to do that. They're 80 pounds per bag, but we do that ourselves. Then every 3 years, we have Ritzman come in or Welsh, and they bring in the clay and redo the lines. And then every 9 years, it is take all that old clay out of there, put in new clay, and that's the real expensive one.
Your colleague is, go ahead, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, this is normal operating procedures. We've done court 5 and 6. We haven't touched court 1 through 3 and 4.
And how long?
2 years. So after this year, the next 2 years, if everything goes according to plan, a major disaster, which doesn't happen, the staff will maintain the courts. I can put down 1 ton of clay, but I can't go beyond that. It takes heavy machinery to put down 5 tons of clay. And the lines, obviously, like you said. So this is pretty much normal stuff. We need to put down some clay on court 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4.
So is this a case of that where our reserves aren't set up properly? Is that what I'm kind of
Okay,
hearing? I mean, and we can't rectify that today. So
It needs to be adjusted. Next time we go around with that,
right.
I really need to sit down with them and have it done properly. Both times it was quite frankly screwed up.
Because these kind of surprises are, fly well. I understand your concern with the bottom line, Denise, but we also can't take money out of the reserves that isn't there. So
Yeah, and like I said, if we use what is there, I think there's 7,000 left.
It's not as simple as that because that involves work and entries. Right now, as it is, you've had several projects on the reserve side, including what's happening with the upcoming fence replacements, where the cost has exceeded what you have in your reserve study. So you know that your reserve funds are running low. I would not touch a reserve at this point for this. You do have money available. We're a few days away from the end of the fiscal year.
Okay.
So I would pay it out of the River Club Fund, non-reoccurring expenses.
I agree.
Okay.
All right, I can do that.
I mean, if there's a shortage of funds.
you can do that if we say you can.
Yes.
Okay.
And if there's
I
a
will
shortage.
remember that. Thank
if
you.
there's a shortage of funds towards the new fiscal year, which I don't think will be the case, we can always do what we've done in the past, which is transfer funds in between funds at the
Right.
authorization of the board.
Okay. Will this affect the upcoming season for you, this work?
If you guys approve this today, we have it scheduled for the 4th, and barring rain issues, we should be in good shape to get it all finished and be ready for season.
How long will it take to complete it? 1 day?
No, it takes about a week.
A week to do it?
We'll
So,
get them in and out as soon as we can.
so that's when the courts are going to be closed? That's
Yes.
the reason for that closure?
We did do algae scraping, by the way, the week we were closed. That was something that we did do. But they also put a chemical down that helps to prevent it.
Okay.
So you don't really get this during the fall and in the winter. You mainly get it in the summertime. It's like the living, breathing materials out there. We're
All right.
watering, we get algae, moss, all kinds of crazy stuff on the courts.
Okay,
It's
so-
like bunker or green.
So we have an area where we can use the funds and, do we
It
have
may be a non-reoccurring from the River Club Fund.
non-reoccurring?
But obviously, whatever motion you make would be subject to preparation of an agreement by council. We would also need a deposit invoice as soon as possible so that Denise and her team can at least cut the checks so that it falls within this fiscal year, not next fiscal year.
Well, Ritzman has really given us some issues about pushing any contract out. So here you're asking them to come quickly.
Yeah, we've been in talks with them
Okay.
about, hold a week for us, hold it for us.
He was here personally, Denise and I met with him, what was it, a week ago?
Yeah.
He came to the club personally to discuss it.
All right, we're gonna move forward on this then?
Yes, okay. I'll move that we accept the bid as presented.
I'll second that.
And authorize the chair to execute a contract subject to staff approval? That's what you said, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Immediately. so
Well,
we can do it.
I've got it right.
Oh, you got it, okay, yeah, and it's, we already had the one contract, so it's just changing the,
I'll try and
a
get
little
it
bit
done.
of verbiage, and I'll get his, invoices.
Denise, the signatures that you're gonna need on that, I am going to be away for 4 days. So I'm gonna ask you to, call Steve and have him sign it, okay?
Absolutely.
So it's the chair or vice chair.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Does anybody need a break?
Sure.
Before we move into. Okay, so we're gonna take a 10-minute break at 10:53 a.m.